civilized person on the face of the earth that is civilized without appreciating what Elokim really means. Elokim means that every human being is created in the image of God, which means that that person is infinitely priceless for Olam. The Lord who loves every human being, the Lord who sees every human being as unique and irreplaceable. In the same way that each of your children is unique and irreplaceable, so too we are the Lord whose children, but the Lord whose children, and therefore Olam sees each individual person as unique and irreplaceable. Unique, irreplaceable, which means that each of us has a unique contribution to make to Tikkun Olam. We want to make the world a better place. That's our mission. That's our mandate. That's what we have to do. So Elokim implies all of the above. An irreplaceable, infinitely loved person, and that's our model. Olam serves as our model. The model that we should follow Olam's footsteps and see each person as we see our own children, that they're unique, irreplaceable. Infinite love is the way that we relate to our children. Infinite love is the way we should ideally relate to every single human being created that's Elokim. What is the implementation of that idea? How do we do it? Next most important idea of UMishpat is Sedaqa UMishpat. We function and we build society based on justice and righteousness. And 2 weeks ago in our Shabbat Perashat, I explained some of the implications of Sedaqa UMishpat. What is justice and what is righteousness? Not going to repeat that. Those are 2 of the most critical and significant ideas of the book of Beresheet. Now, of course, we open up the Gan Eden. What is Gan Eden really all about? There are many foolish people who think it's only about a snake that speaks and tends about a whole story. No, Gan Eden teaches us the most important idea that you as a parent want your children. What do you want to do? What do you want to protect them? How do you want to protect them? You teach your children that out there in the world, outside the Garden of Eden, there is temptation in the world. And that temptation serves as a pit into which, other than that, your children can fall and never recover from. The consequences of not teaching your children this lesson about temptation in the world are grand. Impossible to conceive of. And nobody wants to see a child fail, and therefore parents are responsible to teach our children about what temptations there are. And of course, there are 2 types of temptations. One is the desire for physical possession. I may want to steal your watch. I may want to have your house. I will go to any length because I am tempted by that which you have. I must have it. That's the way we human beings are made by Olam, and there are temptations, physical temptations that we want. But also notice how in this chapter, Perek Gimel of the book of Beresheet, there's also a very subtle undercurrent about sexual temptation as well. You read this Perek very carefully. You notice Adam and Chava were unclothed, and then by Yisrael they understood the word adat in biblical Hebrew means to be intimate with another person. So this is also about the physical temptation, both of possession as well as sexual temptation. Imagine a parent who sends his kid over to the Orient and doesn't tell him what waits for him in the Orient. That's irresponsible. 18, 19-year-old kid goes to the Orient. There are all kinds of temptations in the Orient. The child has to know how to avoid those kinds of temptations. So, of course, we learned that about temptation, about free will. It's up to you to choose properly. And if you don't choose properly, what happens? There are consequences. You pay a price. Torah wants us to know that you have absolute free will to choose what you want to choose. Torah wants us to know that there are temptations, and if you choose wrongly, you're going to pay the price. Adam and Chava paid the price for falling prey to the temptation in the Garden of Eden. And I pray that each of us have taught our children about the temptations that there are in the world, and there are consequences. I spoke about it during the summer. Imagine if we thought through the consequences to our actions, then many of us would not be in the trouble we're in. We thought through the consequences. You do pay a price for your action. That's what Gan Eden talks about. Free will, temptation, consequences to your action. Those are three of the most important ideas in the story of Gan Eden. There are many others. It's a brilliant narrative, of course. But writes brilliant narrative, teaches the right lesson. So therefore, in the book of Beresheet, we learn about A, Elokim, how precious every individual person is. B, we learn about how to do Sedaqa in your business life, your social life, through justice and righteousness. We describe what that is. And 3, we learn about Gan Eden and the 3 levels of Gan Eden. However, the overall overriding idea of the book of Beresheet is family. How to establish the right kind of family. How do we establish people that follow our footsteps, that choose correctly, that choose properly? Abraham was challenged. He had 2 children, Ishmael and Yitzhak. One went right, one went wrong. Yitzhak had 2 children, Yaakov and Esau. One went right and one went wrong. Yaakov had 12 children, and some went right and some went wrong. And the question is, how does one establish a family based on harmony, unity, a harmony that is together, that shares the right status? We found that when we studied this, I only have 1 more minute of your time, that when we studied this, at the end of Ishmael's life, remember the Pasuk, Befiru Oto, Yitzhak, Ishmael, Ehad, that these 2 achieved a togetherness. Ishmael at the end saw the light and became the appropriate kind of a person. Ishmael does the Shuvah, he's about the Shuvah, and he now harmonizes with Yitzhak, and Abraham was able to pass to the next world, cross that bridge from life to life, because Ishmael became an appropriate. Welcome, Rabbi Catherine. Thank you again for all of your help for this program. However, I'll leave you with the question whether or not Esau found the right proper pathway in life. Did Esau become a Baal Teshuvah or not? I suggest you go to the text and try to find out from the text itself whether or not Esau became the right kind of person. If you want to hint, look at the Navi Obadiah. But Obadiah, for many reasons, is my favorite Navi. 1 chapter, very short to go through, and the Navi Obadiah will help us answer that question. But the one critical pasuk that we find in the closing chapter of the book of Beresheet, in Perashat Vayhi, here we found a very interesting pasuk that I'm going to leave you to think about, to understand the full implication of this pasuk, to see whether or not at the end was there harmony in the family of Yaakov or not. At the end, of course, Yaakov passes on and takes to Eretz Canaan. But Yosef seen it at the end. The brothers didn't see that the father passed away. And then they said to Yosef, your father commanded. Your father commanded. His name was Yosef. Go tell Yosef. Ana sana pesha achecha. Please forgive your brother's transgression against you. They did evil to you. But now, sana pesha achecha. Look at it. What's the problem with that pasuk? It never happened. Yaakov, as a fact for doubt, Yaakov never commanded the brothers to say to Yosef. They lied. Why did they lie? They wanted harmony. That question comes up. Did they really only want shalom, right? Or was it only for selfish reasons? And that tells a lot about whether or not Yaakov was able to ultimately teach his family about shalom bayit. If we say that they did this for shalom bayit, they succeeded. His family was harmonious at the end, and he passed this world happily because his children all spoke to each other. But if you interpret that verse as selfish, and they only did for self-preservation, Yaakov did not succeed teaching his children about shalom bayit. The primary crux of the book of Beresheet is how to establish a family which speaks to each other, which loves each other, which